Well, welcome to Deeper Dive series. We're in part two of a powerful series entitled Her Story. Mount Zion, this is something new that we've initiated in light of Women's History Month. Last week, we had a very good discussion with some awesome women regarding embracing the assignment, breaking glass ceilings. And then this week, we're back with a segment from victim to victory. And so we want you to know that we are excited about this conversation and what God is going to do right here. We have some awesome panelists. Before we get into the conversation, I want you to know my name is Pastor Diamond. I serve as Associate Pastor of Vision Development and Execution right here at the Mount. And we have so many things happening we want you to be a part of. Our Becoming a Couple of Destiny National Marriage Conference is getting ready to take place. We have couples traveling from around the world. We want you to register today at mtzionnashville.org. We have singles coming and people coming from around the world. We want you to be a part. Go ahead and register today. Don't delay. We want to see your face in the place. And then we have All Tithe Sunday that's coming up, taking place on Easter Sunday. We're raising over $1 million in order to help outreach efforts, in order to bless our high school students and do all of those great things. We want you to be a part of that. Get ready for Easter Sunday because we have something major called the Andrew Initiative. We need you to invite at least 5 people to service on Easter Sunday. We're making a big push at our Antioch location and our OHB location. We want you to come and be a part of that. And then as well as Jefferson Street also. And so you never know, this invitation could really be the thing that connects someone with Christ. We want to make sure that you invite someone by scanning the QR code that's right there on the screen. Also, make sure you go to MT Zion Nashville. You can get that graphic right there, or you're able to see what's been emailed and texted to you. We want to get this word out because we believe that God is going to do something powerful. Listen, today's deeper dive is a little bit different. And I wanted to come to you, of course, as associate pastor, knowing the sensitivity of this topic. Today, when we talk about the story of so many women from around the world, we have a very brave panel that's going to come to you to talk about some of their experiences. And so we want to, of course, let you know that there's some sensitive topics that are going to be talked about today. We want to, of course, give you a warning. There may be some things about sexual assault, some other things that will be discussed, but we want you to know that we're not going to leave you without some resources, some things that are going to really help you with this conversation. I want you to hear my heart. Because of the bravery of the women today, we want you to know that so many people are going to be helped because of it. And if you're dealing with anything that may be talked about today, we have a professional that is sitting with us that's going to offer some very, very important information, some resources that are going to help you at the end of this segment. So I don't want to delay this moment, but we want you to be sensitive, but open to the conversation that's going to happen today in this 2-part series of Her Story. Let's go into the conversation right now.
Welcome to another segment of Deeper Dive at Mount Zion. I am Minister Alonda Tucker, and I serve as a minister of the Ministerial Alliance here at Mount Zion Baptist Church of Nashville, Tennessee. And you are tuned into a special edition of Deeper Dive. So today we're going to go into our segment. And throughout history, there have always been women who have shown to be able to rise to the occasion, who have shown to be able to go from being victims to experiencing amazing victory. Whether it was from rising from a victim to experiences of victories in areas of voters' rights or in the areas of gender discrimination or whatever area that women have had to deal with, we've seen women be able to go through trials and tribulations and come out with the victory. And so we'll engage with some powerful women whose stories of victory will provide a level of information, insight, and inspiration that will bring measures of healing that will help those who may be struggling with their own stories to be able to rise from being victims to experiencing life-changing victory. And we're going to allow them to greet themselves. Can we start here with my amazing new sister?
Hey, sister.
Hey, sister.
So glad to be here. So I'm Yanetta Spring-Smith. I'm a licensed professional counselor, mental health service provider here in Tennessee. I'm licensed in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Idaho.
Wow.
We needed Black therapists in Idaho,
Yes,
so I
we
got
do.
licensed there. But I have a counseling practice in Clarksville, Springforth Counseling. So I'm a trauma therapist, and I've been doing this for like over a decade. I love what I do. I love being able to help people heal.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to be here. This conversation is going to be amazing.
Absolutely. I believe it's a necessary conversation. So
Yes.
we are honored to have you be a part of this conversation and add some very informational things that we need to know about these different stories and how we walk through and process these stories from a therapist standpoint.
Yeah,
So
glad to be
thank
here.
you so much for
Yeah,
being
thank you.
here. And I know we also have my new amazing sisters here. We have Dion as well as Shaka. And so I'm honored to have you all a part of this conversation, just to be able to share your story. There are so many people and so many women who are experiencing so many different things, and they may even have similar story to yours. So I don't want to, take up your space, but do you mind maybe you kick it off with you, Shaka? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey and your story, and how you've overcome. There are some women, I believe, that will watch this and be inspired.
Oh, absolutely. My name is Chaka Dorsine, and I am a certified inner healing minister. And I arrived to this point because of my story and what had happened. So, just briefly, my first sexual imprinting, and that's what we call it, where I was first imprinted in the area of sex, began at the age of 5. And we listen and we say, 5. Your sexual imprinting should not start at 5.
Yeah.
Right? But I was touched on inappropriately. I'm starting at age 5. And as I was telling Unetta earlier, I don't really remember exactly what happened, but I remember something happened because I began to be very fearful after that, and then very walking in perversion at a very young age, and noticing myself doing different things, touching on myself. So from that point on, these things began to happen in my life, and then leading into my teenage years, becoming very promiscuous at a very early age because of that exposure. And my initial offender at 5 moved in with us when I turned 11. And so that initial contact, inappropriate touching, and then when that person moved in, inappropriate touching started again. And so from ages of about 11 to age 14, the inappropriate touching is consistent. And I'm not telling anyone. I did not tell anyone. I did not tell my parents. They did notice an apparent change in my behavior, but they thought it was just me going from an only child to now having a half sibling. And so they just thought it was just a transition. So they did notice something there. But from there, the inappropriate touching started again. And then once I began to actually be active at a very early age, because of that, I kind of felt like in a weird way, this is my way out, right? So when I began to actually have encounters with people who were not family, boys, then I felt the confidence to say no to my offender from that point forward. And from there, it just turned into a ripple effect of one relationship after another. And I had learned how to disengage my body from my emotion. So I can freely, because I learned at an early age, give my body away and be completely disconnected. And so that leads to multiple partners because you're not connected. You are dissociating, as we were talking about earlier. Dissociating, I learned how to dissociate. And so it just led to multiple partners, promiscuity, and then just downhill from there, just not having self-esteem, and just the trauma that was there. And again, never told anyone.
Wow.
I never told anyone. I held all the pain in until my sophomore year of college, when my mom, because I had a very volatile relationship with my mom and I treated her very badly, and she asked me one day, "Why do you treat me like this?" And that question just captivated me, and it just rung in my head and over and over. And it was at that moment when I began to really think about her question that I realized that I was holding her responsible for what happened to me. So the resentment of it all is what was causing the relationship, and really what began my process of healing, my journey of healing from that question.
So, one of the things that you just kind of spoke on was this idea of compartmentalizing and disassociating yourself from what you were experiencing. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Bennett?
absolutely, absolutely. How brave that is for you even now. I just want to, pause and honor that for you to share that story.
Yes.
And I also want to say that, even as we're getting into this, just for the listeners and for the people that are watching this, to really be mindful of like how you're digesting this information.
Yes.
Because trauma can be really sneaky, and it can, just jump on you, and you can get activated and not even know just from hearing each other's story. So just be mindful of that, like that we're taking care of ourselves, and we're, noticing what's happening within us. Because that could happen, right? Like you said, I learned there are parts that I don't remember about my story, or there are parts that like shut down.
Yes.
And our body is God created us to be very intelligent. He created us to survive and withstand a lot, right? And sometimes when things are too overwhelming or experiences are too much for us, and it activates that part of our brain that compromises our ability to survive, parts are shut down. Yeah. So dissociating is when I become too overwhelmed, and in our psychology we call it like that window of tolerance, our ability to tolerate this. I become too overwhelmed, and I literally check out for my body, right? And that's something that a lot of trauma survivors do, and without awareness that it's happening. But it's our body's natural way of protecting us and allowing us not to become too overwhelmed with what we're experiencing.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
We have my sister, Dion, here, and I know you have as well a powerful testimony of overcoming, and your journey and your story and your path. And, I would like for you to share a little bit of that with us, if you don't mind, because I really do believe that as we're having this conversation, there is someone watching maybe who don't have the voice to be able to speak up and to share their story. And I believe that your story will empower maybe someone who is watching. So,
Praise the Lord.
Dion.
Well, my name is Dion White, and I'm a lover and a healer, and also I'm a real estate broker here in Tennessee. I'm the owner of Lotus Real Estate Brokerage, and a mother and a grandmother. My story, like Shaka, it started at 5 years old. It was a incestuous situation from a family member who I was left in their care. Carried on from about 5 to about 11 years old, with, other things happening with other individuals during that period of time. It seemed as if, then that once I had experienced the initial sexual experience at 5, it kind of like put me on target to be at that time victimized repeatedly. And, after about 11 years old, I started kind of like dating at 11, older guys and everything like that. At 12, I did become pregnant, and I did not have the baby. And around a few months later, I ended up getting pregnant again. I am a mother of 4 children, and I did have 3 of them before the age of 17. So my healing kind of started when I realized that I needed to make sure that the cycle as a young adult did not continue with my daughters and with my sons and everything like that.
That's powerful. That's powerful. One of the things that both of you shared with your story was this family dynamic And there are a lot of people who deal with these different family dynamics, and it becomes hard for them to have conversations. Where do you start those conversations? How do you have those conversations so that you don't, as Shaka said, build resentment in certain cases with family members? Can
Yeah,
you kind
yeah.
of speak to that a little bit from a
I picked,
clinical
you know,
standpoint?
I noticed that too in both of your stories. It happened in the home, right? So I think we teach kids a lot, stranger danger, right? How to handle people on the outside. But we really don't equip our family members and children or, you know, with how to deal with what's happening on the inside, right? And a majority of sexual trauma happens in the home. It happens with family members. It happens with people that you're familiar with, right? Because it's that connection is there. So when we're familiar with somebody and that connection is there, then we're open, right? We're more vulnerable. We're more susceptible to be offended, you know, and be harmed. So I think a lot of what needs to happen within family dynamics is conversations around what's healthy, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And then being able to, when something happens that is inappropriate, you know, how you address it. You know what I mean? It's so important, right? So I'm not sure if that answered your question,
Yeah,
but
no,
that's what I picked up on.
That
you know.
definitely answers it. I think oftentimes, you know, if you're growing up in certain households, they have a mindset of what happens in this house stays in this house. So I'm curious from your stories how you overcame that in order to build a level of communication, to feel comfortable enough to share that this is what I've been experiencing. And even the idea of adding a layer of you being in your adolescent ages, how that impacted you journeying into your womanhood.
So one of the things that you will hear typically when someone who's been experienced sexual trauma, if you really study the family, it's been going on for a long time. And like you said, we're trained, some of us, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And so then a child at an early age becomes very fearful of even talking about anything because they get scolded for sharing family business. And then especially when it comes to sexual sin, that's something that even if you did share, it often was not discussed. You didn't go to counseling or therapy. And so when you look through a family or a bloodline, there's a generational pattern of sexual trauma, molestation, rape, abortion, all of these things. And it's almost like, as Dion said, it begins to chase you. And so it's just what I would call a spirit of perversion that enters a bloodline and continues to manifest until you have one person, and it only takes one, to stand up in a family. It only takes one person to break a generational curse.
That's right.
That's powerful.
One. And that person recognizes this is not right, recognizes I don't want this to happen for my children, recognizes that they can do something about it, and you take a stand. And you have to go in and you have to pray and begin to heal yourself, because you cannot change the people around you. If they wanted to change it, they could have changed it. But once you recognize that you want to change it, you take a stand and you ask God to help you. And once you take a stand and begin to heal, then the curse begins to break. That pattern begins to break. And so that's what happened for me. You know, through the trauma, I didn't even talk about the abortion at 16 because I got pregnant early, and the multiple abortions after that, because I thought, you get pregnant or you have an abortion. That's what I was taught the first time. So I didn't know that was my norm. So several children later, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not right. And so God began to illuminate things, and I didn't even want children, because if what happened to me will happen to my children, I don't even want children.
Wow. You know, you can't heal what you don't reveal. And I think a part of the process is being open and honest with yourself about the reality of what you had to go through and what you had to experience. And having that family dynamic, Dion, how were you able to walk through that process and have that communication? I know you shared, you know, this idea, Shaka, of, you know, sometimes things being generational. How were you able to open up and have that conversation so that you can, you know, stand firm and say, hey, the buck stops here. I have to share my story. I have to let someone know, and then I can begin my process of healing.
Well, for me, it was a little bit difficult to hide because I was pregnant and I was confronted, by family as to, being so young and being pregnant, exactly what had taken place. And so that is kind of like how I revealed about what had happened at 5, and come to find out that particular family member was actually a victim of the same thing. Everyone was aware that they were a victim, no counseling or anything like that. And of course, me being left in the care, that's kind of like what happened. And as I got a little bit older and talked to other people in the family and everything like that, it was possibly a norm as far as, step parenting, blended family situations and stuff like that. It was just a norm in a way. So, for me, it kind of like reared its head. I didn't really have to, come out and do any type of confessions or anything like that because I was kind of like pregnant.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, I often say if we don't transform our pain, we can potentially transmit it. And
Yes.
so it's powerful that as you shared your story, hearing that what was done to you was the same thing that was done to your victimizer. And I often wonder, how do we walk through this process of transforming our pain and moving into a space of healing, especially when you talk about things happening from such a young age and navigating into womanhood, right? Now you're, 11, 12, you're going through your own phases as young girls. Can you speak to that a little bit? How do we navigate when dealing with childhood trauma into womanhood and kind of balance it out to start our process of healing with dealing with trauma at a young age?
Yeah. It's a process,
Yeah.
right? It's a process, and that process is going to look different for everyone. Your story and how you were able to share what happened to you, or how it even was received. I think that's a big part of,
Yeah.
the process of when we share or how we transform. I always say trauma is not just what happens to you, it's the response to what happens to you
Absolutely.
that could create, my ability to repair this rupture and heal, or my ability to feel like I still need to cover this up and operate from a space of shame. So I think everybody's process is different, but I think it starts with acknowledging like what happened to you,
Yeah.
right? And knowing that that was not okay, right? And also knowing that avoiding blaming yourself, because there's so much blame that comes when you've experienced like a sexual trauma. Even at a 5-year-old level, the way they conceptualize and see the world is I'm good, I'm bad, right? So if something bad happened to me, I must be bad that this happened, not the person. Because adults can't be bad, right?
Right.
Adults are supposed to protect me, or older people are supposed to, I look up to them. So it really causes you to have to speak with somebody that understands trauma, that understands your pain, that understands your experience, and really looking at it from the perspective of what you have, because it's not a cookie cutter.
Right.
This is, you check this box, you check this box type situation. But I think it starts with acknowledging what happened to you was not okay, and avoiding, the shame that comes along with that, and also getting some. I like matching my letters and stuff,
Matching
right?
letters.
Bishop
right.
Walker, the pastor,
That's
he matched
right.
letters. So, I kind of,
Bishop does match
but also being able to get that accountability,
Absolutely.
right? And that support from people who get your story,
Yes.
right? There's a special bond and connection, I'm sure, that y'all will have just because of your experiences, that other people don't understand and get. So there is power in community and healing and being able to share your story in safe spaces, because everywhere isn't safe,
Absolutely.
right? And I think knowing that is very important when you're looking to transform and heal.
Absolutely. Can you guys kind of share your process of healing? And the reason why I use the word process is because it is indeed a journey. It's a process. I don't believe that there is a destination per se to healing. It's something that you have to walk out. So where did your healing process begin? And at what point did you say, okay, I've experienced this trauma, but now it's time for me to start healing, to start transforming?
My story is interesting. I'm a middle school educator. Always taught middle school math, and my process, God did many staircases and trying to get my attention to the fact that I needed healing. But it started in my classroom, teaching my young people. School, growing up, being abused at an early age, was a safe place for me. So when I accidentally became an educator, well, by God's divine grace, right? But it was not my plan. When I began working with these young people, I wanted to be that safe place for them that they were for me. And when I decided that I wanted to be that safe place, it really began to challenge my authenticity, where I will begin to minister to them and tell them how they should, stay to themselves and leave the boys alone and focus on school, yet I would leave school and do the opposite of what I was telling them to do. And because I am an authentic person and desire to be authentic, God really began to challenge me about, you're telling them one thing, but you're not living it. And so he used my middle schoolers, and they looked up to me. They respected me. They would listen to me sometimes more than their own parents. And I really began to say, I want to be what I am telling them to be. And so that was the first way God really grasped my attention, through teaching those middle schoolers, because I didn't want them to look up. And you could tell, as someone who's experienced trauma, you can see the trauma in other people.
Absolutely.
You can discern the trauma going on, and at an early age, they were being exposed to more. So God really began to use my classroom and how I ministered them to start my healing journey. And I began to just seek God and ask him, I don't know what I need to do. I don't know how to do it. I don't even know what this voice is that keeps talking to me. Something said, this something said started talking to me very frequently as I taught these students. And so my journey began with that, just wanting to be what I was asking them to be, and to be essentially that safe place for them, that true safe place where they can share, because I could see that many of them were hurting. And I also wanted to be someone they could confide in. So that motivated me to really begin my true healing journey and my true walk with Christ, to be quite honest.
That's powerful, how God will use your trauma to transform you, to sometimes in certain cases even draw you closer to him during those difficult times. Dion, what does the process look like moving towards healing? What was your healing process like? And at what moment did you kind of say, okay, I need to start walking this thing out. I need to start moving towards healing. This is something that I need. What did that process look like for you?
For me, I was always, raised in a church and everything like that, baptized in the church. And I was in and out of like adolescent counseling and everything, because my mom, she actively wanted, to get help for me. And I think as an adult, the pivotal moment for me was I worked for an MCO. Back then there was this managed care organization. They had us to have it was a kind of like a field trip for us to go up to the Rape and Sexual Abuse Center, because they wanted us to be able to help our participants in our insurance. And so while I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that there was a place like this. And I was like, I went to the receptionist. I was like, how would I set up an appointment for me? And she was like, let us take care of you. And so at the Rape and Sexual Abuse Center, then I was maybe like about 22 or 23 years old. I really got into some serious therapy.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask a question. So even after you told them what happened, like after you had your baby and you told them about your trauma, you still didn't get any type of support or anything until you were 20?
No, my mom had me in and out of like adolescent counseling and everything like that. But when someone else has you go into counseling, that's one thing.
Yeah.
When you choose to go because you know that you need help,
Yes.
that's when it makes a difference.
Yes. Okay.
It's powerful that your mom even was kind of utilized to step in and say, hey, my daughter needs help. That's powerful in itself, because there are so many people who are afraid to share with their family members because of potential repercussion, or they don't know what that would look like the moment.
Just afraid.
Just
Yeah.
afraid.
That's why I didn't tell. I was just afraid to tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not because of anything. I believe they would have fully supported me. But one of the things is being fearful of what my father would have done. And I didn't want to lose my father.
Yeah.
So even protecting him from going to jail because I was afraid. I mean, and then just afraid in general what the response would be. You just don't think about it. You're just trying to keep yourself safe.
Yeah. And it's powerful, even as you all are sharing your stories, we think about the protective father and, what those repercussions would look like, but also like our Heavenly Father and how we interact with God because of these experiences. Can you guys kind of share your process a little bit and your relationship with God and how that helped to kind of facilitate and move you into your healing process? What did that look like?
Well, for me, I got saved when I was 13. I was not raised in a Christian home. We knew to be good people, have good morals, do good in school, but we weren't raised in church. I didn't learn my books of the Bible until high school. But I always knew God was there. I always knew that when I would pray, and I would pray silly things, and God would bless, and I'm like, oh, that was a fluke. But it wasn't until, again, I graduated from college and started teaching, and this voice began to frequently visit me. Something said, I know that's the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely.
And I took I gave God a challenge. I would give God these challenges. If you're real, if this voice is seriously you, then show me, heal me, help me. And I don't want anyone else helping me. I don't want anyone else talking to me if it's you. And I took this 365-day challenge with God. And I said, I will give my everything. I will serve you like I serve the world. And I did what I needed to do. I went to church. I attended. I didn't know anything about church. I was scared to death. We had a larger church. I would sit in the corner in the back, and I would just listen to the word. And the Holy Spirit would say 3 things. Listen to the preacher. Apply the word. And don't pay attention to the people.
Wow. That's powerful.
Listen to the preacher, apply the word, and don't pay attention to the people. I now understand why, because it can be a distraction, but that began my journey. And in that 365 days, his presence, his power, angelic visitations was undeniable. It was undeniable that God was real. And I told him, if you show me that you're real, I'll never go back to the world. And so that began my whole healing journey. And I got involved we had a healing and deliverance ministry at my church. And then he just began to guide me on the things to connect with in church.
That's powerful.
Interesting. It sounds like you had like a really strong foundation. You know what I mean? Like with your...
I would say, I did go to church with great grandma growing up, sleep on the pew. But, they said faith comes by hearing. I guess I'm still hearing even though I was asleep, and vacation Bible schools when you would go visit grandma. And I always loved those things, but it wasn't like in the home, and even once I got saved, I got saved and the only time I went was with friends. And so I will say this, that my friends in my neighborhood, they were very critical to my relationship building, what I did know of God, the Bible study in high school. But I mean...
Yeah. It's a testament to your ability to be resilient and your ability to navigate healing, like what type of things you have deposited in you, as well as, you had the trauma, but there's also that other side where you had the vacation Bible school and you had the grandmama and you had the friends and you had the teachers, you know what I mean? And that plays a really vital role in our ability to see another side, or to really even be able to tune in to hear the voice of God. Pastor Anita Phillips has a quote that I love, and it says, when you're emotionally healthy, you become more spiritually healthy, right? So for somebody who experiences trauma, especially childhood trauma, if they don't have those emotional connections that are healthy and adaptive and positive, it makes it really hard, to navigate that trauma, in your adulthood. So that's something as a therapist that I look for, right? Who did you have? When did you feel safe? When did you feel good enough, or valuable or worthy? Because we need to use that, right, to help process and like reprocess some of those traumatic incidents. So
My dad was an engineer also. And so I was daddy's girl. So I always spent a lot of time with him. And what I do realize is he would always, with his engineering, have to get to the root of the problem. So no matter what he was working on, taking a computer apart, he would always tell me, baby, no matter what, if there's an issue, we have to find the root.
right.
And so that led into a lot of the healing ministry. If there's an issue, there's a root somewhere, and if we can find the root, we can heal it or help it. In his case, fix a computer. But that was foundation, even though it was not biblical.
Right.
It is
But
biblical.
it is,
right?
right? Because everything is
Right.
adaptive. Everything is connected to God. God is in everything, right? So that message that your dad gave you about an engineering experience, the way our system worked, the way God designed us and created us, it adapted and moved into the lane of this is how you heal your trauma. Right. So I love finding those things and hearing those things because that's important. And it also helps us to see and have empathy for the people and compassion for the people who don't have that. Right. There's nobody that I can relate to that told me that I was valuable and worthy and good enough, or everybody that, my teachers and my caretakers, they all spoke negative things over me. It makes it very challenging,
Yeah, definitely. I believe that these stories that we're sharing is blessing so many people who you're giving a voice to the voiceless.
Yes.
Just through these testimonies. The Bible declares that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. And when we are empowered to speak, to share our stories, there's someone who hears that and it leads them to God. It draws them back to Christ. And so what would you say, and we'll start it off with you, Dion, to maybe someone who is out there who has a similar story to you, and they're looking to start their healing process. They just don't know where to start. What would you say to that individual?
I would say kind of like what I told myself, I trusted the Lord and I trusted the process, that there was more good out there for me than what I had experienced.
Yes.
And I would just tell them, to look to and have hope
Yes.
that the situation will change. Tell someone, because what I've learned throughout the years is that there are people that we believe that their life is perfect. And sometimes when they come and confide in you, you realize that your story is very similar to theirs. I've experienced a lot of other women that have, experienced sexual abuse as children, also, date, rape, all kind of things like that. But I would just tell them to look for hope in the Lord and look for that there's always something good that is going to come, and the situation will not always be the same.
That's amazing. Powerful. Shaka, 30 seconds. What would you tell that person out there who has had a similar story?
I would tell them that God can and God will.
Absolutely.
He's able to heal, and healing begins with the sanctification of your heart.
Yes.
And as long as you're willing to take that stand, then do it. And it's not just for you, but to think about them and all of their generations that will come after them. But there's nothing that God cannot heal. To reach out, to tell someone, to get that help, find a therapist, pray to God to send you, fast and pray. And so, but God can heal it, to get help.
Yes. Yes. That's powerful. Well, you women are amazing, and we thank God for you being so strong and willing to share your stories. Thank you so much. There's someone out there that I know will see this broadcast. They're going to watch this video, and it's going to touch so many lives and empower them.
Wow, what a conversation we just had today. We want you to know that we take very seriously what was shared today. Because of the bravery and the vulnerability of the women who shared today, we know that so many were helped. They became a voice to the voiceless. So, with that being said, as promised in the beginning, we don't want to just leave you with this conversation, but we want to make sure that you have some practical steps that will help you if you're dealing with anything that was talked about today. We have a professional that's here that's going to give you some steps to help you walk out this process. Maybe you say, I'm ready for healing, but I don't know where to start. I'm going to yield to the professional, because when we don't know what to do, sometimes we have to seek those who have answers. So I'm going to yield so that we can get some tips on how to move forward.
Yeah. Such a wonderful conversation we had today. So powerful. What's resonating with me is, above all, guard your heart, right? For out of it flows the issues of life. So if while you were listening to this segment, something came up for you, if you were reminded of something, one thing I always say is, it's okay not to be okay. It's not okay to feel like you have to stay that way, right? So we want to cultivate an environment where you know that healing is available to you, right? Where you know that you're not too far gone, where you can't come back and heal or resolve issues. It doesn't matter how long it's been, right? So I want people to know that. And I also want people to know that healing is not linear, right? That it's a process, and everyone's story is different, right? So sometimes when we hear stories like this, we can get a little activated, and we can get a little angry or we feel like big emotions. If that's what you're feeling, know that it's okay, but also know that there are trained professionals out there, along with Jesus and prayer and all of the spiritual things that we can see to really help us work through those wounds, right? So I just want to encourage everybody that if something came up for you listening to this, please, seek a professional to really work through that. There's several resources. There's several directories. I have a directory called the Groundbreakers Therapy Directory, if that's okay for me to share. And we can list that in the notes of the broadcast, like all of the different directories, sexual assault centers, different places where you can go to start your healing process. But no, it may have started with this conversation, but it will not end with this conversation, right? And know that it is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it's a process. So wherever you are in that process, know that it's okay and that there are people here that can help you.
Thank you so much. And with that being said, if you are dealing with any of this, or maybe you want a relationship with Jesus Christ, we're here today to be of open arms. We have a plethora of resources. You can get them by just following the instructions right here on the screen, and we're going to make sure that you get the resources that you need. But if you want a relationship with Jesus, that may be your first step. We know that the resources are important, but a relationship with Jesus Christ may be the first step. If you're interested in getting to know Christ, or you want to connect with our ministry, you can text salvation to 78228, and there you'll be able to connect with us. We want to thank you again for tuning in to Deeper Dive. This has just been phenomenal. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, may God bless you is our prayer.